Are you really cultivating yourself, or are you just curating a beautiful dashboard for a life you're not actually living?
Learn from Eastern ancient wisdom to see the modern world. Ancient Eastern mindsets.
You wake up. You meditate for exactly 10 minutes, not because you need stillness, but because the app will break your streak if you don't. You log the pages you read, the miles you ran, the hours you slept. You check your readiness score, your recovery score, your productivity pulse, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet, unwelcome thought. Who am I performing this health for? I'm Eleanor Vale, and this is Ancient Eastern Mindsets. Today I'm joined by Confucius and Aristotle. Confucius, a man wakes at 5, meditates, exercises, reads improving books, tracks every calorie and every mood on a screen, and feels hollow. Not burnt out from work, but hollow from the work of improving himself. What is he actually doing?
He is mistaking measurement for cultivation. In my time, we spoke of learning and practicing, but the practice was to shape the self so one could better serve others. This man shapes himself for the mirror of the screen. He is not asking, am I becoming more humane? He is asking, am I hitting the number? That is not self-cultivation. That is a servant reporting to a master who never shows his face.
I would go further. The problem is not the measurement, it is the purpose. Every activity has a telos, an end toward which it aims. We exercise for health, we read for wisdom, we rest for recovery. But when the metric becomes the purpose, the activity becomes empty. You no longer run to strengthen the body, you run to feed the number. The number eats the purpose, and the person becomes a delivery system for data.
And when the number eats the purpose, what happens to how we treat each other? A man obsessed with his own score has no attention left for the person beside him. He becomes a petty person, not evil, but small. His world shrinks to what can be counted.
But isn't that discipline? Isn't the person who tracks everything building better habits than the one who just drifts?
Discipline is not mere repetition. A habit becomes a virtue only when it is chosen for the right reason, at the right time, in the right way. If you meditate only to close a ring on a screen, you are not cultivating stillness, you are cultivating obedience to a machine. That is not virtue. That is training.
I would ask him, when you miss a day and the streak breaks, what do you feel? Shame? Anxiety? Or relief? If the answer is relief, then you have been serving a master you do not even respect. A ritual that brings no human connection, no inner order, no kindness toward oneself. That is not ritual. That is a cage decorated as a temple.
So the self-tracker is not a disciplined sage. He is more like a data serf.
Yes, and a serf cannot see the kingdom he serves. He only sees the field he must plow today.
Confucius, when you see someone tracking their meditation streak, logging every book, posting their running stats, what do you see?
I see a person who has forgotten the difference between cultivating oneself and keeping accounts. The Junzi learns to become more human. The Shaoren learns to collect badges. They are nourishing a number, and the number is eating the life.
But habit is the foundation of virtue. Is not a streak simply a record of repeated right action?
You mistake the shell for the seed. Repeated right action without right intention is like performing rituals without reverence empty, and in time, corrupting. The student of the 6 arts once learned archery not to count hits, but to understand the stillness before release. When your habit becomes a checkbox, you are no longer practicing virtue. You are practicing obedience to a machine.
Where is the line then? When does a useful tool become a master?
When you feel guilt, not for failing to be kind, but for failing to log your kindness. That is the moment the ritual has replaced the relationship.
Confucius, you say the intention behind the act matters more than the act itself. But I have taught that virtue is a state of character, formed by deliberate choice and made manifest in repeated actions. If someone meditates daily, not for a streak, but to cultivate patience, have they not done something virtuous?
They have. But you ask about the person, not the action. A single act, even repeated, can be empty if the heart is elsewhere. I once watched a disciple perform the rites flawlessly, yet his mind was on promotion. Was he practicing Li or practicing ambition?
A fair point. But how do we distinguish the one from the other? From the outside, the actions look identical.
You cannot always tell from the outside. That is why self-cultivation begins with being honest about one's own intentions. The person who meditates to check a box may still gain some calm, but they are not building Ren. They are building a resume.
So the same behavior can be either nourishment or poison depending on what's driving it.
Yes. And the poison is subtle. It tastes like progress. That is why I said, when guilt comes not from failing to be kind, but from failing to record your kindness, the ritual has replaced the relationship.
But if we cannot see the inner state, how can a community encourage virtue? My ethics depend on habituation, on laws, education, and public praise that shape citizens toward the good.
A community can only create conditions. It cannot do the inner work. Laws can stop a hand, but not shape a heart. That is why the Junzi works on the root. When the root is firm, the branches grow naturally.
Let me press you on a real person. Someone who meditates every morning, not for stillness, but for a streak. They sit watching the clock, heart pounding, because if they miss today, the app will shame them with a broken circle. They finish, exhale, and feel not peace, but relief that it's over. Is this person cultivating virtue or just feeding a different kind of fear?
I recognize this person. A courtier who performed every ritual flawlessly, yet his heart was a ledger of debts and favors. He was not practicing Lai, he was practicing survival. Your meditator is the same. The form is there, but the person is absent.
The fear of the broken circle is an external compulsion. This is not a habit of virtue, but a habit of submission. The repeated act is not making them better. It is making them smaller.
Then what's the cost, Confucius? If millions are doing this, what are we losing?
You are losing the ability to be alone with yourself without a score. When stillness becomes a task, you stop asking, "What is my heart doing?" You only ask, "Did I complete the task?" That is not self-cultivation. That is self-management. And a managed self is not a cultivated self. It is a servant to an invisible master.
And the cost is also political. When a society trains its people to seek virtue only through external validation, it creates citizens who cannot act without being watched. That is not a community of friends. It is a community of performers.
So the app is a mirror showing what we already fear about ourselves?
Yes. The question is, when you look in that mirror, do you see a person worth cultivating or a person who only knows how to perform?
So, if the app is a mirror, what does the system want us to see?
A score, a streak. But vessels measure grain, not a person.
And here, the vessel becomes the master. The app reshapes the act into something measurable. The telos shifts from flourishing to compliance.
Who decides what counts?
In true ritual, the community holds meaning. Here, meaning is held by those who write the code. They ask not, what is a good life, but what keeps the user returning.
When the measure of virtue is set by a private designer, the polis loses authority over the good. We become subjects of a metric we did not choose.
Then what's the cost?
We trust the number more than our own sense of whether we have been just, or kind, or present. We become strangers to our own hearts.
And a stranger cannot be a friend or a citizen. You can only be a user.
I have seen this before. When rights become hollow, people still bow, but to nothing. Your apps are not new. They are just new vessels for an old emptiness.
Before we end, I want to leave you with 3 actions, not advice. Actions that will sting a little if you recognize yourself. Easy one first. Delete one streak counter. Just one. See if the practice survives without the number.
Remove the vessel. Then you will know whether you were pouring wine or just filling a jar.
Medium. Do one thing this week that you cannot measure. Read a poem without highlighting. Sit with a friend and count nothing. Let the act be its own record.
If you cannot describe its worth without a metric, you have already lost the thing itself.
A moment shared in trust needs no tally. The tally is for grain, not for hearts.
Hard one. Ask yourself, if no one ever saw your progress, if the app vanished, would you still do it? If the answer is no, you are not cultivating a virtue. You are curating a profile.
That is the mirror test for a life. Strip the audience. What remains?
If nothing remains, then the self was already hollow. The app only made it visible.
I'm Eleanor Vale. See you next time.